The Stranger. Prologue. The quiet arrival. The town of Elmsworth hadn't seen a new face in months. Tucked between rolling hills and a sleepy forest, it was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business. Births, deaths, and even the gossip in between. So when a tall man in a long brown coat stepped off the early morning bus, dragging behind him a single worn suitcase, it didn't go unnoticed. He had a shadow in his eyes, the kind that told stories of distant places and forgotten memories. He didn't speak to anyone at the station, didn't wave or nod. He simply looked around as if searching for something or someone, and then walked off toward the town's only inn, the Cedar House. The innkeeper, Mrs. Lillian Marsh, eyed him cautiously as he stepped through the door. "Room for a few days," he said in a voice rough as gravel. "No name?" she asked, holding her pen mid-air over the ledger. He hesitated, then said quietly, "Call me Jack." And just like that, the stranger had arrived. Chapter 1. Whispers and Wonder. By noon that same day, every shopkeeper, barber, and baker had heard about the stranger. At the diner, whispers floated above cups of coffee like steam. "Did you see that coat? City man, no doubt," said Earl, the retired postmaster. "Or a drifter," muttered Clara, the waitress. "They never stay long." At the library, 16-year-old Emma Carter was shelving books when she overheard Mrs. Winslow, the librarian, discussing him with a patron. "He has that look," Mrs. Winslow said, "like he's carrying ghosts in his pockets." Emma rolled her eyes. Townsfolk could be dramatic, but she couldn't lie. She was curious too. After all, nothing ever happened in Elmsworth. That afternoon, as she stepped out of the library to walk home, she saw him for the first time. The stranger, Jack, was sitting on a bench in the park, staring at the statue of Mayor Henry Elmsworth, the town's founder. Something about him made Emma stop. He wasn't just watching, he was remembering. Chapter 2. The Eyes That See Too Much. Emma stood frozen a few feet away, unsure whether to speak or simply watch. Jack's gaze was distant, almost haunted, as if the statue wasn't just stone, but a portal to something deeper. After a long moment, Jack spoke quietly to himself. "You were the first, but not the last." Emma's curiosity finally won. She stepped forward, clearing her throat gently. "Excuse me," she said softly. Jack turned sharply, eyes narrowing, then relaxing when he saw it was just a girl. "Can I help you?" he asked. Emma swallowed. "I'm Emma. You're new here, right? What brings you to Elmsworth?" Jack studied her for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Looking for answers." Emma blinked. "Answers?" Jack nodded. "Yes, sometimes the past catches up with you in unexpected places." That was vague enough to make Emma's interest deepen. "Well, if you're looking for answers about the town, you should start with the library. Mrs. Winslow knows everything." Jack's eyes flicked toward the library sign just across the street. "Maybe I will." Emma hesitated, then added, "If you want, I can show you around. It's not much, but, well, sometimes it's better to have a guide." Jack's expression softened. "I'd like that." As they walked toward the library, Emma noticed a flicker of something vulnerable beneath his guarded exterior. The stranger wasn't just a visitor. He was a man running from a storm only he could see. Chapter 3. Secrets in the Stacks. The library smelled of old paper and polished wood, a comforting scent that made Emma feel at home. Jack followed her quietly, absorbing every detail. Mrs. Winslow looked up from behind the front desk, adjusting her glasses. Her sharp eyes took in the stranger immediately. "Can I help you, young man?" she asked, her voice polite but firm. Jack stepped forward. I'm looking for information on the history of Elmsworth, particularly about the town's founder, Mayor Henry Elmsworth." Mrs. Winslow's eyes flickered for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "We have some old records in the archives. Follow me." Emma stayed close, watching Jack as he moved through the rows of books. He seemed focused, almost tense. In a bathroom, Mrs. Winslow pulled out a dusty ledger and a bundle of yellowed newspapers. She spread them out on a wooden table. "Mayor Henry Elmsworth was a respected man," she began, "but his last years were shrouded in mystery. There are rumors of strange disappearances around that time." Jack leaned in, tracing his finger along a faded article headline, "Elmsworth Town Founder Disappears Without a Trace." Emma's heart quickened. She glanced at Jack, whose eyes now burned with a fierce determination. "Why are you so interested in this?" Emma asked cautiously. Jack's voice dropped. "Because what happened then, it's connected to what's happening now." Emma felt a chill. Something was very wrong, and the stranger was at the center of it. Chapter 4: Shadows of the Past. Jack closed the ledger carefully and looked at Emma. "You might not want to dig too deep. Some histories are better left buried." Emma's eyes widened. "Why? What's going on?" Before Jack could answer, the library door creaked open and in walked Sheriff Tom Bennett, his tall frame filling the entrance. His eyes locked on Jack instantly. "Newcomer," he said gruffly, nodding toward Jack. "We don't get many of you round here." Jack met his gaze steadily. "Just passing through." Sheriff Bennett grunted and turned to Mrs. Winslow. "Anything I should know about?" Mrs. Winslow shook her head. "Just some old town history questions." The sheriff's eyes lingered on Jack a moment longer before he said, "Well, be careful. Elmsworth has its share of secrets." After the sheriff left, Emma looked at Jack again. "He doesn't like strangers much." Jack smiled thinly. "I don't blame him." As they left the library, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the town, hinting at the darkness beneath its peaceful surface. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that her life and Elmsworth were about to change forever. The next Chapter 5: The Whispering Woods. That evening, Jack stood at the edge of the forest that bordered Elmsworth. The trees swayed gently in the cool breeze, their leaves whispering secrets he had long tried to forget. Emma found him there, drawn by the same restless curiosity that had led her all day. "You shouldn't be out here alone," she said softly. Jack turned, surprised but not displeased to see her. "The woods hold answers too." Emma shivered, stepping closer. "People say the forest is cursed, that those who enter never return the same." Jack's gaze hardened. "Or don't return at all." He reached into his coat and pulled out a worn photograph, faded, but still clear enough to see the face of a young woman with kind eyes. "She disappeared here 30 years ago," Jack said quietly. "My sister." Emma's breath caught. "I'm sorry." Jack nodded, folding the photo carefully. "I'm here to find her, or at least the truth." As night fell, the two stood together at the forest's edge, unaware that eyes watched them from the shadows. Chapter 6: Unearthing the Truth. The next morning, Emma and Jack made their way back to the forest, determined to uncover its secrets. Jack carried a small backpack filled with essentials, a flashlight, a map, and a worn journal with cryptic notes. As they stepped beneath the towering trees, the sunlight filtered through the canopy in fragmented beams, creating an almost magical glow. "This way," Jack said, consulting his journal. "There's an old trail here, long forgotten." Emma followed, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. The deeper they went, the quieter the forest became, as if it were holding its breath. After several hours, they stumbled upon an overgrown clearing. In the center stood the remnants of a stone structure covered in moss and vines. Jack knelt, brushing away leaves to reveal a carved symbol, a twisted tree with roots tangled around a crescent moon. "This was my sister's last known location," he whispered. Emma looked around, noticing strange markings on nearby trees, symbols she didn't recognize but felt ominous. Suddenly, a low rustling came from the bushes. They froze. A figure emerged, old, worn, and trembling. It was Old Man Grady, the town's reclusive hermit. "You shouldn't be here," he warned, his voice shaking. "Some secrets are dangerous." Jack stood tall. "We need to know the truth." Grady's eyes darted nervously. "The forest keeps its own counsel, and they don't welcome strangers." Emma exchanged a glance with Jack. Whatever they were about to uncover, it was bigger than either of them had imagined. Chapter 7: The Pact. Old Man Grady's eyes flickered with fear as he stared into the shadows beyond the clearing. Years ago, he began in a hushed tone. The town's founders made a pact with something in these woods, a spirit, or maybe a curse. It granted them prosperity, but at a price. Jack's jaw tightened. What kind of price? Grady looked away, voice barely a whisper. "Every generation must pay. Disappearances, madness, loss. It's why your sister vanished." Emma's heart raced. "Why didn't anyone tell us this?" "The town keeps its peace," Grady said, "but the balance is breaking." Jack clenched his fists. "Then we have to break the pact." Grady shook his head. "It's not that simple. The spirit demands a sacrifice, one willing soul every few decades. The town fears what will happen if the cycle ends." Emma swallowed hard. "And if we stop it?" Grady's eyes met theirs with a warning. "You risk everything, including your lives." A heavy silence fell over the clearing as the weight of the truth settled in. Jack looked to Emma. "We're not turning back." Emma nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "We'll face whatever comes." The woods seemed to lean in closer, as if listening. Chapter 8: A Town on Edge. Back in Elmsworth, the atmosphere was shifting. Word had spread about the stranger and his questions, stirring old fears and long-buried memories among the townspeople. Emma noticed the change immediately. Familiar faces that once smiled now avoided eye contact. Doors were closed earlier. Conversations hushed as she passed by. At school, her friends whispered rumors, stories of disappearances, strange lights in the woods, and warnings to stay away from Jack. One afternoon, Emma's best friend, Lily, pulled her aside. "Emma, you're playing with fire," Lily said, eyes wide. "People are scared, and some don't want you asking questions." Emma clenched her fists. "I can't just ignore it. Jack's sister is missing. This affects all of us." Lily's voice lowered. "Then be careful. There are forces in this town that don't like strangers stirring the past." Meanwhile, Jack stayed mostly silent, but his tension was palpable. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that Elmsworth was holding its breath, waiting for a storm. That evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Jack stood on the porch of the cedar house, staring into the darkening forest. A shadow moved in the trees, a silent watcher. Jack's hand tightened on the railing. The past was catching up, and the stranger was no longer just a visitor. He was the spark that might ignite everything. Chapter 9: The Warning. That night, as Emma lay in bed, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Leave Elmsworth before it's too late." She sat up, heart pounding. The message was chillingly clear. The next morning, Emma showed the text to Jack. His face darkened. "They're watching," he said quietly. "The ones who want to keep the secret." Emma felt a cold knot in her stomach. "Who are they?" Jack shook his head. "I don't know, but they'll do anything to stop us." Determined, Emma and Jack met at the edge of town, planning their next move. "We need to find out more about the pact," Emma said, "and how to break it." Jack pulled out his journal, flipping to a page filled with cryptic symbols and notes. "There's a ritual," he explained, "an ancient way to end the cycle. But it's dangerous," Emma warned, "and we don't know everything." Jack nodded. "We don't have a choice." As they prepared to face the unknown, a figure watched from the shadows, a silent threat waiting to strike. Chapter 10. The Night Visitor. Late that night, a sharp knock echoed through the quiet inn. Jack and Emma exchanged wary glances before Jack rose cautiously to answer. At the door stood a young woman, soaked from the rain, her eyes wild with urgency. "Please," she gasped. "You have to help me. They're after me too." Jack's expression hardened. "Who's after you?" The woman looked around nervously, then whispered, "The same ones who want to keep the pact alive. They've been watching me for weeks." Emma stepped forward. "Who are they?" The woman's voice trembled. "The Council, a secret group in Elmsworth. They protect the pact at all costs." Jack felt a surge of anger. "We have to stop them." The woman nodded. "There's more you need to know about the ritual and about what really happened to your sister." As thunder rumbled outside, the three of them sat together, beginning to unravel the web of lies that had held the town captive for generations. Chapter 11. The Hidden Truth. The woman introduced herself as Mara, a descendant of one of the town's founding families. Her voice was steady, but laced with fear. "The council formed long ago," she explained. "They made the pact with the spirit to save the town from ruin. In exchange, they agreed to silence anyone who threatened to expose the truth." Jack clenched his fists. "So they're responsible for my sister's disappearance." Mara nodded grimly. "She found out about the pact and tried to break it. The council stopped her, and they've been silencing others ever since." Emma shuddered. "How do we stop them?" Mara pulled out an ancient scroll, yellowed and fragile. "The ritual to end the pact must be done at the heart of the forest, where the spirit was first summoned, but it requires a sacrifice, a willing one." Jack's eyes met Emma's. "We have to try." Mara looked between them. "Be warned, the council will stop at nothing to protect their secret." As the night deepened, they planned their dangerous mission, knowing that failure could mean death or worse, eternal silence. Chapter 12. Preparing for the ritual. The three of them met at dawn, the forest cloaked in mist and mystery. Jack carried the scroll carefully, while Emma brought a small satchel with supplies. Mara led the way through winding paths, her knowledge of the woods vital to avoid the traps and watchers set by the council. As they moved deeper, the air grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence. Shadows shifted among the trees, and distant whispers seemed to call their names. Emma's heart pounded. "Do you think they're watching us now?" Mara nodded. "They never stop." Jack steeled himself. "We need to stay focused. The ritual must be done before midnight." Hours passed in tense silence as they navigated the forest's secrets, finally reaching a stone altar covered in ancient symbols, the place where the pact was first forged. Jack unrolled the scroll, reading the incantations aloud. The air shimmered with power. Suddenly, a chilling voice echoed through the trees. "You cannot undo what was promised." The council had arrived. Chapter 13. Confrontation at the altar. The shadows parted as figures cloaked in dark robes emerged from the trees, surrounding Jack, Emma, and Mara. Their faces hidden, their eyes gleaming with cold determination. "You do not understand what you meddle with," the leader warned, voice like a blade. "The pact protects this town. Without it, ruin will follow." Jack stepped forward, unwavering. "Your pact has cost innocent lives. It ends tonight." Emma gripped Jack's arm, heart pounding, as the council began to advance. Mara raised her hand, chanting the ancient incantation from the scroll. A brilliant light burst from the altar, illuminating the clearing. The council hissed, retreating against the power. But their leader snarled, "If you break the pact, you break the town's fate." Jack and Emma stood together, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down, but resolved to see the ritual through. As the last words of the incantation echoed, a deafening silence fell. The forest seemed to exhale, and the oppressive presence began to lift. For the first time in decades, Elmsworth was free. Chapter 14. Aftermath. The forest was still. The oppressive weight that had long hung over Elmsworth had lifted, replaced by a calm, almost hopeful breeze. Jack, Emma, and Mara stood by the altar, exhausted but triumphant. "We did it," Emma whispered. Mara nodded, tears in her eyes. "The spirit is free, and so is the town." As they made their way back to Elmsworth, the first rays of dawn broke through the trees, casting light on a town that felt different, lighter, freer. But their victory was bittersweet. The sacrifices made, the lives lost, and the secrets uncovered would forever mark them. Jack looked at the town as they returned. "My sister's spirit can finally rest." Emma smiled softly. "And maybe this town can finally heal." The stranger was no longer just a visitor. He had become part of Elmsworth's story, a story of courage, truth, and the power to change fate. Chapter 15. New Beginnings. Months had passed since the ritual. Elmsworth was beginning to breathe again. The townspeople, once wary and distant, slowly opened up. The whispers of fear turned into conversations of hope. Emma and Jack often walked together through the now peaceful woods, the shadow of the past lifted but never forgotten. Jack had decided to stay in Elmsworth, no longer a stranger, but a guardian of its new future. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Jack handed Emma a small box. Inside was a simple pendant, a twisted tree entwined with a crescent moon, a symbol of the pact that had once bound the town, but now symbolized freedom. "Thank you," Jack said quietly, "for believing, for standing with me." Emma smiled, her heart full. "We changed the story, together." As the stars twinkled above, Elmsworth slept peacefully for the first time in generations, and the stranger's journey had become a new beginning, not just for him, but for everyone who called the town home.